Yeah, so let's return to Cork as
Yeah,
a specific place. And first of all, what connects you to Cork? Is it your birthplace or have you moved
yeah,
there? So,
yeah.
what?
It's my
what
birthplace.
hmm
My birthplace. So I'm born, as we would say in Ireland, born and bred in Cork. Yeah. So both my parents are from Cork as well. And grandparents would have been from Cork. So yeah, rich history in Cork. And raised in the suburbs then. So my mother would have been raised in the city centre.
hmm
So she's a real city centre person, and knows the city well. So she would have been from the what's known as the north side of the city.
hmm
My father was kind of more on the outskirts of the city. But yeah, we were all born in Cork. Yeah. Um, and then moved out, as the city started expanding
hmm
out of the city centre, you started seeing all these suburbs developing. Um, so we moved then to I think I was only about one when we moved out to what's known as Bishopstown. So it was where the bishop's old residence was, I think. So we moved out to a suburb then in Bishopstown, which is within the city, obviously,
hmm
city environs, yeah. And yeah, so that's my connection. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what does it mean to you? Again, you have been traveling, you could compare your native city with others. What would you say? What's the essence of Cork City for you?
For me, yeah. So for me, there's huge pride in the city, actually. I would say there's huge pride. Cork, I think I might have said this before. Cork would have been known as the rebel city. So the colours of the city are red and white. And now I only heard this actually in recent years, but it was known as the bandage, right? So the bandage of wounds. Um, and that's where the red and white came from. Now I don't know how true that is, right? Um, but yeah, very, very proud people. Um, yeah, very, very proud and see themselves actually as maybe very different because of that rebel. So during kind of over the years, the Cork were very rebellious, let's say, during the Civil War. So there's that element to the Cork people. They're very, very proud.
Mhm,
Um, and you have a big influence as well. It's really interesting. So near Kinsale here off the coast, um, you had the Spanish coming in. The Spanish Armada came into Cork,
mm,
into Kinsale, in 1160 something. But they came in to support the Irish against the British. So there's that element of the rebels in the south in Cork, um, and very much in relation to, you know, kind of fighting our corner, and this is our land and this is our place.
mhm.
Yeah.
How does it feel today?
How does it feel? Cork feel
Okay.
today?
How does it felt today? This proud and this maybe a rebel spirit as well.
Yeah, there is a rebel spirit. Yeah. There is a rebel spirit. Like even through our sports, Marina, I would say, right? So the Gaelic Athletic Association, GAA, would be our biggest sporting organisation in Ireland. So having your team, the team of your county and your city is huge. So yesterday, just as an example, um, Cork won kind of a national championship. And it had been 28 years since Cork had won that particular championship. So, teams go through or counties go through kind of ups and downs. But the pride in the city, right? I mean, the flags were out, very much everyone showing who they were and what the city was all about. And actually, the game was played in Cork City. Um, so it's that it kind of shows up in times like that. Um, in relation to sport, I think as well is there's huge pride in the harbour, the harbour of Cork. So Cork has a second largest natural harbour in the world. So it's always been a very strong trading city. You know, butter, actually, we have in the city, in the north side of the city, what's known as the Butter Exchange. And the Butter Exchange was one of the largest butter exchange structures in the world, where butter used to be exported from the Port of Cork. So I think there's a lot of pride in the place itself. And I'm speaking for myself, right? You know, and even just from speaking to my, you know, my parents over the years, is the place that is Cork. The the stories of Cork, the old characters of Cork, you know, that we always knew of characters that people knew and people would tell stories of. So even recently now, there was this lady, right, that we all knew her name was Kathy Barry. And Kathy Barry was a character in Cork, and everybody knew her, and people are still talking about her. Now she's probably dead 200 years, but she was a character, well, probably 150 years, but she was a real character of the city.
What did she do? Who was she?
He was a trader. So I think trade is something that we're very proud of. So we had this old market, which was known as the Coal Quay, or the Coal Quay. So coal as in coal, quay. And that was a place where the women, which were known as shawlies, and Kathy Barry was a shawlie. And you say, what's a shawlie? So a shawlie was these women who used to trade, but they used to wear these black shawls. And that was kind of a sign of Cork, right? Maybe. So these women were very, very entrepreneurial, actually, when you think about it, right? You know, they'd set up their stall. It could be fruit and vegetables. It could be clothes, second-hand clothes. Maybe they sold coal. I don't know. But there, you know, so actually, even now that you're asking the question, is kind of there's a history of these women in the city. So Kathy Barry would have been one of them. And my mother talks about, you know, the story of Kathy Barry, and it was interesting. My daughter was only recently in the city, and she went into this old pub for a drink, and she came home and she said, "There's pictures of this woman all over the wall. Who is she?" And it's Kathy Barry. So this is where Kathy Barry used to drink, right? So she was a drinker, right? So she'd work in the market, and she would go into this bar, which was on the Coal Quay, and she would have her drinks, and then she'd come back out and she'd trade again. So there's the characters I think we're very proud of. And it's interesting, I was asking somebody recently, and I don't know who it was, and they brought up the characters as well. They said, our characters are dying. We don't have characters in the city anymore. You know, the people that you might see around the place, and you say, yeah, they're real Cork. We don't see them anymore. It was very interesting just having that conversation with somebody in the last few days. So the city is very diverse now, which is a great thing. Which is a great thing. So if you go into the city, now, if I go into the city now, and if I sit down in a coffee shop, you'll hear all these different languages around you. It's incredible. It's incredible, really. But you know, that's probably been introduced by a lot of the companies that are in Cork. So they attract a lot of foreign, I suppose foreign is the word we use, foreign workers, because they have a lot of call centres, and they need all the different languages, right? So they bring a lot of these people into the city. So yeah, the city is very, very diverse, and you can see the changing of it. It went through a period, I think the city centre went through a period of neglect, I would think, but definitely seeing massive regeneration of it, and real focus now on the city centre again, and looking to bring people living back into the city centre. Whereas there was a real kind of sense of people moving out, you know what I mean, of the real centre of the city. So I think that I'm certainly seeing that. I was only looking at something that popped up on my LinkedIn last night in relation to late night trading. So there's a real focus on late night trading. So trading is really, really important to the city. It's a trading city. It's a wide open port. It's actually one of the biggest ports. It's the biggest port actually of trading through the United States by sea into Europe. So it's really, really interesting like that. And I hadn't really thought about it that much now before, but actually, yeah, it's a trading city, and it prides itself on that. Yeah, prides itself on that. So it's open, I suppose, in that regards then, you know what I mean? There's constantly, big ships and containers coming in and out. And with that then you have all different nationalities coming in and out all the time. Cove then, which is just outside the harbour, was known as Queenstown. That was named after Queen Victoria, but was renamed, but then back to Cove, right? So they, when the Civil War happened, and that's amazing. Like the history there as well is amazing. This most beautiful cathedral down there, but that would be one of the biggest cruise. All the big cruise liners come in there. So again, there's all this constant trading. People coming and going all the time in and out of the city, actually, of all different nationalities.
How does it influence the culture, the history, would you say, and the maybe the modern understanding of the city? So as far as I understood, that's trade and huge tourism and lots of nationalities. So what would you say, how does it shape the modern face of the city?
Yeah, it's very diverse. It's hugely diverse. It's changing probably people's sense of their city. So maybe there was an element, and I'm just, being aware of this, people thinking that the real Cork, to a certain extent, lost itself for a period of time to all this, immigration and whatever. But there's a real pride in it, and you can see that now that, it's kind of really, it's kind of saying, okay, it doesn't have to be all of us just as Cork. It's diverse, but now there needs to be a balance. So I think you see it in the, say, like the St. Patrick's Day Parade. So the St. Patrick's Day Parade now is very diverse. So there's representation of all the different nationalities that live in the city now. Whereas for a period of time, it was pure Cork, and then it became very multinational, and Ireland, the Cork got lost in it. Whereas now there's kind of more, it's kind of being proud of who we are. Yeah, so I think and the older generation find that difficult. I think they find that difficult. I'd often say to my mother, and I even use the term there, you heard me saying foreigners, right? They're foreigners. They're foreign to the shores. We use that a lot. But my mother who's 88, she uses that term a lot. And she said, oh, they're foreigners, right? But she might speak to somebody of colour, let's say, at the bus stop, and she might say, where are you from? And they might say, I'm from Cork, And well, no, my mum would say, but where are you from? And they would say, no, I'm from Cork. Might be born and bred in Cork, but because they look different, the older generation will always refer to them as foreigners. So it's really interesting. My sister-in-law is Vietnamese, and they have two beautiful children, right? Who, obviously with an Irish father and a Vietnamese mother, look different to your typical Corkonian, which I would be a typical Corkonian, right? And so I'd use that example. I said, Mum, would you think that Tara and Bobby, would you call them foreigners? She said, no, they're from Cork. And I said, but that's an example, right? You know what I mean? So it's that kind of the changing face of the city. And I think the city is finding itself within that now. Do you see what I'm saying about what my mother's thoughts, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes,
They're my family.
Yes, I understand it very much. And I was just thinking that that's the wonderful moment to come to this idea of the soul of the city, because the face of the city can change. It
Yes.
can be even in different color.
Yeah.
But the soul, what is the distinction of the soul of the city that would give the sense of being a Corkonian and being the native to this place, despite of the color of the skin, or maybe even maybe belonging to some extent to other traditions, but what would make a person, a Corkonian, a person who belongs to this soul of the Cork?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's even nearly they're even on the face of it, or not the face of it, their accent, right? That's part of it as well, right? So the minute somebody opens their mouth, you know they're a Corkonian. You know, you just know. So even if they're, you know, a person of, let's say, of color, which we wouldn't have been very exposed to really until really probably the 80s, really. But the minute so you see the families now who've come into Cork and lived and made Cork their home, their children are, you know, are pure Cork. The minute they open their mouth, you say they're Cork, you know. So there's an element of that, and I think it's the pride of place again. I think that's how you would say. I probably put it another way, and I'm probably doing it myself. Cork people are quite boastful. I think we're quite boastful, actually. And, you know, I've worked with people from other counties, and they would say, oh my God, the Cork people, they're always on, look, Cork this and Cork that. You know, so I think we're a bit boastful. I think we like being a bit different. Are we different? We certainly think we are. You know, yeah, it's
What are they boasting of? So what's the subject of this boasting? So
our
what's
place, I think, Cork.
belonging? Yeah, belonging to the place.
I think belonging to the place, exactly. I think there is a thing about that, but there's no, like you would say, there's nowhere like Cork. The best place ever, you know. But again, it's interesting you asked that question. As an example, on Saturday evening here, right? So I'm living in the suburbs, right? There was there was a there's a gospel choir. I have a good few friends who sing in it, right? And they do all their gospel singing is, I mean, they don't charge like they do for charity events, whatever. And they held an event in one of the churches just in the near here. And like it was so beautiful and it was so inclusive and it was so warm and loving. And that's the one thing that people were talking about. It was this, like everybody was supported. Do you know what I mean? Everybody felt supported regardless of where they were from. And you had every, you know, origin, let's put it like that, there represented. So I think it's a feeling of pride and support. I think support one another. I think the Cork people are very supportive of one another, largely. Yeah, I would say they are. They're very smart and they're very good with their neighbours. To their neighbours. Now again, they would say, has that been lost, right? Over time, but I think that I'm getting a sense of that's very much coming back. It's kind of saying, okay, maybe we've been diluting ourselves a little bit, and how do we really be proud of what we have here? And we have a beautiful city. We really have. It has its problems, absolutely has its problems. But they're being, you know what I mean? It's a constant kind of saying, okay, how can we improve? How can we make it more welcoming?
That's also an interesting connection to the idea of the sense of the community. So what does it mean to be the part of the community in Cork, in terms of having this sense of belonging not only to the land, but to the community, to people who are supportive? So does it connect it to neighborhoods? So you said that
Yeah, They
usually.
would be neighborhoods. Yeah, yeah. So there's a real I suppose we talk about it, the north side of the city and the south side of the city.
Mm,
It's really interesting, and the north side. So my mother would be a north sider. Let's put it like that, right? So that was the real old traditional side of the city. The buildings in that part of the city are much older. Um, and it's divided by the river. So the River Lee flows through the city,
mm-hmm,
right? And it's the river. So you have the port, right? So you have the ocean and the port, and then the River Lee flows through. And anything north of the river is known as the north side, and anything south of
mm,
the river is the south side. So it, I often thought this, even as a child, I would say, I think we Corkonians originated in the north side. No, I don't know if there's any historical truth in that, but I always said there was that's where Cork really was the north side of the city, right? And then people started migrating to the other side of the city. Now, it was interesting, right, is that it seems if you crossed the river, so my mother crossed the river over to the south side,
mm-hmm,
and that would have been, she's getting notions about herself. Do you ever hear that term, notions? They've got notions. That would be a real Cork thing now. Notions, they think they're better. So they
mm,
move away, right? Um, so the south side of the city was always considered as being more affluent and successful.
mm-hmm,
So there was so coming back to your question about community, is that the certain parts of the community really, really support one another. And I would still say to this day, even though I'm living in the south side, I've always lived in the south side of the city. And there's real sense of community, but I would say the real strong sense of community is in the north side.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of they really are nearly the original Corkonians.
Mm. What about this international trading site? Can you say that, for example, southern part may be more diluted in terms of mixed in cultures, and northern part stayed more pure in their historical
It's it's
sense?
it's really interesting, right? So when you walk up, if you go, I don't go to the north side that often, truth be told. Why? I don't know. I don't have family up there anymore. But if you walk up the north side, so you go
Mm-hmm.
over the bridge, and you're going up the north side of what's known as Shandon Street. So Shandon is an image of Cork. It's a very, very old church steeple with with a salmon on top, salmon of knowledge on top, and that would be kind of if you ever looked up Cork, you'll always get an image of Shandon, right? So if you go up Shandon Street, it is literally, I mean, the majority of people living in Shandon Street are of color, are Nigerian, um, very so no, I would say that the North Side has embraced it, has
Mm-hmm.
embraced that very much, and has integrated um, you know, people into their community. So it's really, really interesting. And and then the south side obviously has as well, but it would be more predominantly on the north side.
Mm-hmm.
Now again, I'm only looking at it from what I see.
But then what, in this perspective, what is the difference, and why do you consider that sort of northern part is more sort of uh, Kirkorian, but than the southern?
Yeah, it's kind of even the accent, of people from the north side is, we would call it pure Cork. It is, there's no denying Cork once you cross over the bridge. It's amazing. It's just amazing, actually. And there's definitely a different mindset.
Mm.
It's interesting, actually. It's so funny. We joke about it, the north side is the south side. We joke about it, but there's real, um, you know, emotions about it, really, I suppose, to a certain extent. So our daughter started a new job recently, and she said, She said, there's an awful lot of people. So she's born on the south side, right? Right. You wouldn't have ever lived in the north side. And she said, there's a lot of people in my new job live down East Cork, right? And immediately, rightly or wrongly, immediately, myself and my husband said, oh, they're Northsiders anyway, right? It's really, really interesting. As the city started to expand, right? So it started expanding, obviously, out east and west. The younger generations of those from the north side, typically now, right, move east. The younger generation of the south side move west.
Hmm.
So it's and like I would say, even from what Kelly was saying, right, because there's a lot of people, live down East Cork, and we were saying, yeah, they're definitely Northsiders. Most likely 90% of them are, right? Whereas I can see from my generation, as we started having our own families, we go west. And it's interesting because we've been talking for years of kind of downsizing the house now, the kids are gone or whatever. Now you can buy property on the east side of the city much, much cheaper than the west side. But there's some part of me is that I don't want to go east. What's all that about? You know?
Yes.
No, I prefer the west. I prefer the land of the west. And maybe it's the land, right? That there's something, it's rugged, it's wild or something. Um, yeah, it's really funny. It's really, really funny. And I'm thinking of a good few people that I know now that I've worked with, and they're all Northsiders. And we would call them, it's interesting, the salt of the earth. We refer to them as they're the salt of the earth. Typically, Northsiders are. They're more real, they're more authentic. Do you know what I mean? It's take me as I am. This is me. Whereas I think the Southsiders, and I'm putting my hand up here as well, we're a bit more guarded. We're a bit more, yeah, I think we're a little bit more guarded, and and there was a time as well that people from the north side felt that if they put their address on a curriculum vitae, their CV for a job, that they were being discriminated against. So there was an element of that. I don't know how true that is, but I'd say there was an element of it, you know, you know. Um. So yeah, there's definitely something there. There's definitely something there. Um. So then again, if you come back to the city, so there's
Mhm.
parts of the city are on the north side, parts of the city are on the south side. But it's the city centre now, which is actually the city centre is on the south side of the river.
Mhm. Was it the center of the city on the south side of the river for in all times, or was it
Yeah, that's a very good question.
based?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a very, very good question. It's as long as I know it is, and it's now Cork is built on a marsh, right? So Cork is built on a marsh. The riverways are very important, and the bridges are very, very important. But yeah, that's a very good question. Was the city centre, as I know it now, always the city centre?
Mm.
Or was it more, up around Shandon Street?
Mm-hmm.
I must speak to my mother about that actually. I must
Yeah,
speak.
that's interesting because if this Shandon Street is the symbol of the city, maybe
Yeah,
historically it's.
and the North Cathedral as well. The North Cathedral, which would be at the top of Shannon Street, is a real symbol of the city. And
Mhm.
then you have St. Finbarr's Cathedral on the south of the city. But then now there could be a religious thing here as well, even just when you think about it, right? So the North Cathedral will be a Catholic cathedral.
Mhm.
Um, and the St. Finbarr's Cathedral on the south side it's not Catholic. I don't know, is it Protestant or is it Anglican? But it's not Catholic. So there could be something there as well. you know, in relation to the migration of, you know, the people. Maybe was there a divide, not, you know, at some stage in linked to creed or religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible. That is possible, actually. So it could be, there could be a real, so that's really interesting now. I mean, I find that very interesting myself. Because
Yeah, it's
I was never in St. Finbarr's Cathedral, would you believe, which is very close to me, until Christmas of this year,
mm-hmm.
because it wasn't Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, I mean, like beautiful, absolutely stunning cathedral. So we went to my niece Tara, and was singing in a choir there actually for Christmas. So I brought my mother there, and it was just so beautiful. And my mother had never been there actually. She had never been inside the door of St. Finbarr's Cathedral, whereas she used to go to mass every day in the North Cathedral as a child. So yeah, I think there might be something there as well.
yeah, that's interesting how it was formed historically. Yeah, well, what
Yeah, how it was formed historically, exactly, exactly. And you know, was there an element of the so like the kind of the professions, you know, the legal professions, the banking, that's all on the south side of the city. Whereas the manufacturing, so when manufacturing came into Ireland, I suppose the large manufacturing organizations around the 70s, when they started coming in, when the electronics industry, all based in the north side of the city.
Mm.
Like Apple Computer, as an example. I mean, their European headquarters is up in Hollyhill. I can see it from here. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And this would be one of Donald Trump's bugbearers, right? And the likes of Apple Computers here, but you would nearly say, I would say, like they must have about 6,000 people employed there. It's huge. Um, I would say 95% of them are north side people working there.
Mm.
So they're to put it like this, they're more the hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
But it is different. I mean, I'm not saying Southsiders are not hard workers, but they're typically more in the more traditional, hands-on type of industry
Mm-hmm. People who produce something.
who produce something. So maybe there's maybe something there about producing something. Yeah. Um. Now, subsequently, then now within the harbour of Cork, you have I think 8 out of the 10 medical device organizations in the world are all based around Cork Harbour, and you have all the big pharmas. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is where the tariffs are really going to hit Ireland really, really hard, really hard. The US tariffs, um, because our biggest export is pharmaceuticals into the US. Yeah, mostly um manufactured here in Cork around the harbour. Yeah. So, but it's interesting, even as we're having that conversation now in relation to, you know, I would say that the workforce, just as an example with Apple, let's say, extremely loyal to the company. I would suspect, since the likes of Apple and there's other organizations have come in, I'd say, you know, we're probably on the third generation of that family are working for Apple.
Mm.
It's ingrained into their family, you know. So that's really interesting. You know, I mean, if say for instance, and people would always say, if say for instance the likes of Apple ever moved out of Cork, it would be total devastation for the north side of the city. So you know what I mean? They're very dependent on it. Not dependent is probably the wrong word, but they you know what I mean? I would say we're on third generation, definitely.
Mm. So it's not even dependence, but sense of belonging to this
Yeah,
organization, to this corporation, to the
yeah.
maybe.
But they give, and this is the thing, is that you know there's a real, they're part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
They're embedded in the community. You
Yes.
know, they're part of nearly the fabric of the community there, which is really, really interesting. So again, I think there is something about, there's something about um being of service or something,
Mm-hmm.
and earning a good wage, for making something they can see. And that's very interesting now as I say that, right? So I worked in manufacturing myself, manufacturing finance, in my earlier career, and then I moved into professional services.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I really, really missed was not being able to see a product. I really missed that. And I actively sought to go back into manufacturing because I love to be able to see, this is what we're doing. This is why we're here. This is why we're putting all the effort in. And it's interesting. I never thought of it like that before, but to be able to see
Mm.
what you develop, or where you work, what you're contributing to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a lot about the having the purpose and seeing the outcomes of your
In the outcome, yeah.
work, of your
Yeah.
effort.
Exactly. That you can see the outputs of your effort. And I remember very strongly feeling that myself.
Mm-hmm.
My mother would, so when she lived in the north side, and then when manufacturing, as I say, came into Cork, it all came in around the harbour. So the harbour was a natural place for development of industry.
Mm-hmm.
And she worked for Dunlops. So Dunlops, Dunlops? They make tires, they make,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So Dunlops were a big, big employer in Cork, and they were based along the waterway, in from Cork Harbour into the city. Now, my mother was a supervisor in Dunlops, which was a big, big deal for a female to be a supervisor at the time. But then once you got married in Ireland at that time, you had to give up work. A woman could no longer work once she was married.
Mm.
Um, that was kind of something brought in about from the Catholic Church. So it's just really interesting. So very capable, right? So again, a lot of the industries then became very much male dominated because
Mm-hmm.
the women had to, they weren't allowed work um once they married. And that came in. So Dunlop's was around the harbour, and then you had Ford's cars, huge
Mm-hmm.
employer in Cork as well, around in the 70s and 80s, 1970s, 1980s. But both of those closed at the same time. And there was a massive recession, right? So again, it's kind of interesting that Cork saw some very, very much dependent on the Dunlops and the Fords, and then they pulled out, and then there was like, oh. And it's
Mm.
really interesting. I suppose every city sees it, but with the likes of Apple, there's a kind of a large loyalty to those organizations, and that's why that's probably why a lot of those organizations come here. You know what I mean? They have a loyal workforce. They have a well-educated workforce who will deliver and will stay with them. So that maybe there's something there as well.
Mm.
There's something there as well.
That's what I wanted to say. Can we say that people from Cork are loyal so loyalty is we said this about the proud of being of belonging to the place, so
Yeah.
it's very similar to this loyalty to the organization and to the community and
Yeah.
to some. So can we say that maybe some specific trait of the Corkonian character is this sense of belonging and maybe even longing to belong to some bigger bigger purpose, bigger entity, something which is bigger than individual. So
Yeah.
we
I think,
part of
yeah.
something more than ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like even kind of how our identity, even coming back to, or how we identify ourselves as Corkonians, and we want to make sure that people know we're from Cork. I mean, it's nearly one of the first, even some of our even our comedians joke about it in Ireland, you know, nearly the first things that people will say, I'm from Cork.
So it's not the same with people from another Irish cities.
No, it's not as much, not as much, right? So there is something that we'll always say, you know, I'm from Cork. And it's in the, you know, other people say, yeah, we know, we know you're from Cork. So
You know,
yeah, there is a real pride. Yeah.
it's not such similar to any European sense of sort of individualism and being sort of more focused on your family and your own house, or something more sort of maybe a small community or some neighborhoods, but not such a big belonging to the place, to this sense of being part of the bigger thing of the city. So I don't see this is the similar to other Europeans or even to British, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Now again, this is my perspective and this is how I see it, you know. Yeah, it is very, very interesting. It'd be very interesting now if, you know, to speak to others from Cork and get their sense. You know, it would be really interesting to get an interview with you know, some of the community, you know, community, say within the north side and the south side, and without saying anything, wondering, is there anything different?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite profound actually. It's a real pride of place. And even just some of the, you know, the symbols of the city, like Shandon and most Shandon would be a big symbol of the city. The port would be a big symbol of the city. The port as you're coming into the port, Cove, Cathedral, interestingly enough, is on the north side of the, even though it's outside the city bounds, it's on the north side. It's more working class. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. There's a working class, a strong working class identity to the north side. Whereas like the south side, again, I'm, you know, it's just my own perspective. Would we see ourselves here? I might say would we see ourselves as working class? Yes, I would. But you know what I mean? There's a distinction there. There's maybe the sense of that, again, there's the producing something as opposed to a knowledge-based industry.
Mm-hmm.
That can be my own bits now coming up. You know, bettering yourself. You know, my mother, why would she have left the city, the north side of the city, to move to the south side of the city? Was to better herself, was to
Mm-hmm.
better her family. Like my mother, like this is so funny. My father worked what was known worked on the buses, right? He was working on the buses, the bus driver. But my mother was kind of the manager of the house, and my mother put the deposit on the house without my father even knowing it. You know what I mean? So again, there was this very strong feminine kind of a thing, and she was in charge of the house. And my father would give his money, you know, to her, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to manage the house. He'd keep, you know, obviously some of the money for himself, but the money was handed over. And so she bought the house without him even knowing, which was, you know, when you think about it, like back in the what 50s, late 1950s or 1960s. So I think there might have been a strong female kind of thing in the city as well. Even when I mentioned the Shawleys earlier on, like the Shawleys were a real symbol of the city.
Yeah, that's precisely what I wanted to also to ask you about, this feminine energy of the city.
Mm,
So even when you mentioned that the well-known character of the city
yeah,
was a woman, a working woman, a tradeswoman, it's also
yeah,
says a lot. So
it
in
does.
Catholic sort of Christianity, so rather patriarchal, I would say, religion, but
Yeah,
these strong feminine characters,
yeah.
it's again, it's unusual. So
It
what?
is unusual, actually. And and as I say, even as we're talking about it, like, the Shawleys were a big deal, and they're still spoken about, and they're still revered. As I say, the pictures of them are on the walls of, or cafes and bars in the city. Um, and everybody, like, we all know Kathy Barry, like, she did like 150 years, but yeah, a real character, a strong female presence. Like, you think as well about, I mentioned Nan O'Neill before. So Nan O'Neill was a big, and still is, um, known character within Cork. And she was from a very wealthy family within the city, but she saw, the lack of education. So she would bring the children in and feed them and educate the children. And she went on then to form the Presentation Sisters, the nuns, the Presentation Sisters. So within the city, you have the Nan O'Neill Centre, which is absolutely beautiful. It's just so beautiful, right? Within the grounds, they're still there. And you have a lot of community groups now based out of there. So one of them is the Lantern Project. The Lantern, so it seems Nan O'Neill would walk through the city with a lantern, looking for, children and feeding them and whatever. So again, a very dominant female force in the city. She went on then she moved to France, and she set up I think was it the Benedictine nuns as well. So it had a huge influence on education within Europe, within Ireland and within Europe. And so you have the Presentation Sisters convent here on the south side of the Cork and on the north side.
Mm-hmm.
My mother would actually say, so my mother, which is really interesting, her family lived they originally lived on the south side. That's interesting. I'd forgotten about that. They lived on the south side of the city, across the road from the Presentation Convent, which is where Nan O'Neill had set that up. And my mother would say that they would leave their doorway open at night. And I said, why would you do that? She said, people who didn't have anywhere to sleep, we would leave them sleep in our hallway. Like, you wouldn't dream of doing that now. You know what I mean? So there was something about caring for people in the city. Now again, it was straight across the road from the Nan O'Neill Centre. They lived literally. Mum said mum went to school there for her first few years, actually, and then they moved to the north side, I think, when she was about maybe 6 or 7. So yeah, so again, there's another strong female character within the city, and I'm sure there's many, many more actually. But the trading was part of it. Yeah, the traders. Like Kathy Barry was a trader. They're known as traders. Yeah, I must look into that actually more now. I'm really curious about that now myself. Yeah, and it's interesting now. I might be going off on a bit of a tangent. So we're kind of going down the road now of we're kind of coming up to our presidential election. So our president will be retiring. The president of Ireland, right, will be retiring in November. So the talks of our presidential election is coming up, and it's amazing the amount of females that are kind of being, there in the running for presidency. Now, we had Mary Robinson was our first female president, who's just an amazing president and is just an amazing woman. And then you had Mary. We had a second Mary. I can't think of her name now. She was our second female president, but it's looking likely we're going to have a third female president. But actually, the female thing now has really gotten me curious, right, about the cities. So as an example, right, so you have, if you think about the city, right, you have Cork Port, right, so the port is really important to the trading of the city, right. Then you have the Cork City Council, which is the Cork City Council, and then you have the county, right, the Cork County. So the county obviously is much, much bigger, right? And then you have the city, and then you have the port. but it's really, really interesting. The leaders, the CEOs of Cork Port, Cork City, and Cork County are all females.
That says a lot.
It says an awful lot, actually. It says an awful lot. So it's really, and I've been actually kind of watching this kind of with interest in the last number of years. And it's nearly like the females are moving up the road, right? So the Kerry, which is the county next to us, so the chief executive Kerry County Council has recently moved in to become the CEO of Cork County Council. One of the senior leaders in the county has now become the city CEO, and the ex-CEO of the city is now the CEO of the port. So it's like they're moving up the road, like they're moving. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. All women. So there's something there about the city, the female. I'm going to have to do some more investigation about this now. But isn't that very interesting? The three biggest positions from a trading, from a city who sees itself as a real trading hub, all women.
Yeah, even when you spoke about the top of mind heroes of the city, and they are women, that's also
Yeah.
So it's a lot about feminine energy in the city. So, and to sum up, so if from through your sense, through your vibes of this understanding of the vibes of the city, so if the city would be a living character, maybe some mythic character or fairy tale character, or maybe even some animal character or something, what would you say? First of all, my question was, would it be he or she?
The she.
So that's
It's a she, definitely is a she. Yeah.
And what image would sort of would you see, what it evokes in you?
I think it would be a very proud female, strong female, and with an element of rebelliousness, being a real rebel, right? That's how I would probably see it. That's kind of the image that kind of comes to mind. A strong, proud, capable woman who had an element of rebelliousness about them. And actually there's another female that's coming to mind, and I need to pull this out as well, who was a big influence actually during the Civil War. Very strong females actually based out of Cork who were supporters of Eamon de Valera, who became our first president as a nation, but he was very much backed by some very strong females from Cork. So yeah, so I would say a very strong woman, and I can like Maud Gonne now is coming to mind straight away. So there's all these females. Ooh, yeah, very tall, proud, strong, capable.
Yeah, that when you were talking about such a woman, of course, again, my first association was with French Jeanne d'Arc, somebody like that. What's the difference? So she was sort of a warrior, a fighter, in sort of the symbol Jeanne d'Arc.
Oh, Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, Joan of Arc. Yeah.
Joan of
So
Arc,
she
yeah.
was a soldier, like she was. Yeah. So yeah, somebody like that who wasn't, who could even.
What's the difference with the Carconian woman?
Oh, from Joan of Arc?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the difference? She's certainly taller. she's certainly taller, even though I don't know what Joan of Arc, what height she was. But
Mhm.
it kind of nearly very proud, again, that proud and being able to hold her head up really high.
Mhm.
Um, I think probably somebody who would actually very well dressed, took pride of how they looked,
Mhm.
not in a not in a fashion way, but they took pride in how they look and would wear a hat. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's nearly part of the people, I think. Very much seen as um one of the people,
Mhm.
as opposed to being apart from the people,
Mhm.
you know. Somebody who people could understand, wasn't too far removed, let's say, from people within the city.
Yeah, and also I was thinking about this character of the trader. Yes, this uh, strong trading roots of the city. It's
Mm,
again, it's about independence, not just sort of fighting. It's mostly of being
yeah,
uh, independent and well, trade is a very peaceful um, thing because you can't trade when it is war, when it is some struggle
yeah,
for sort of rebellions.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
mostly about building bridges, about
yeah,
negotiations, finding some common ground and equal exchange.
yeah. That's very, very true. And as you say, through the trading history of the city, you would had to be able to do that, to be able to negotiate and to be able to trade. And it's interesting. It's interesting. It's just come to me now as well. It's like Cork would be sometimes referred to as the People's Republic of Cork, right? And it's kind of said in jest, right? But it's felt very strongly. It's and we call it the real capital. Like we call Cork, this is the real capital. Um, it's just interesting, right? I even was on a call recently with the Courageous Conversations group, and we were, people from all over, and so many of the people in the group said we'd vote for Cork to be the 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 capital of the city. So yeah, we would see ourselves like that. Now it's interesting at the moment as well that our Taoiseach, who would be like our Prime Minister, is from Cork. So he's a Cork man, yeah. So again, in relation to, negotiation as opposed to retaliation,
Mhm.
that's the message that's coming out very strong, say from say Ireland at the moment in relation to kind of the trade war, as there is a okay, no, we again because we know we're so dependent on them, so, so not to be kind of easy target, but negotiate. No knee jerk reactions. To be able to talk and have a negotiation, um, as opposed to you know, firing back fire with fire doesn't work.
Mm. And the last question about this soul and this uh, character which embodies the soul of the city,
Mm,
how could it help deal with this multiculturalism or even globalization, which influences a lot the modern state of the city and this mixture of nationalities and losing to some extent this sense of uh, belonging to the land and to their uh, true culture of the city. So how would you think this soul, which we tried at least to touch and to
mm,
connect to,
mm.
would it help in these challenges of globalization?
Yeah, I think it would really help actually, because it's something that you can visualize. You can see it. You can. So, kind of, as you say, the embodiment of the city, the soul of the city, if you were to represent it,
Mm.
what would it look like? And I would think that would be something that would really be help people. to connect. Because you know, there's so many actually females now, you know, coming to mind when I think about it. You know, some of the pirate queens of Ireland are all they're all females, right? They were I mean, they, you know, they were leading, you know, their ships out of Kinsale. So one of the pirate queens, there's many pirate queens in Ireland who kind of controls the oceans like around the world, and many of them are from Cork. Yeah.
That's another interesting story.
It is actually. I just because my son-in-law actually just made a small, when he was supporting a small film actually about one of the pirate queens, based in Kinsale, which is literally down the road. So again, there is something really strong there.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and again, that's trade. The pirate queens of Ireland. So you've Granuaile and you've, yeah, I'm fascinated now. I need to do a bit of more digging myself, but because your questions have really kind of opened up something for me, Marina, in relation to the importance of the female. Now, the importance of the female for Ireland is hugely important.
Mm.
For Ireland anyway, from the land, right? So I was telling you that about Eru, who, and I carry her coin all the time, right? So Eru is the is Ireland, right? That's who she is, right? So she was a mythical goddess, right? Um, and it helps me hugely actually to kind of see her, and she was, you know, I mean, the image of her is very alive for me, even though she was mythical. But her clothes, and St. Bridget actually. So St. Bridget actually, that's coming now up. St. Bridget is coming up as well. So St. Bridget we've just named her our second national saint. So St. Patrick, but St. Bridget actually had a bigger role to play in the globally. And she talks about, very similar to Eru, you know, her role of her cloak. And her cloak, how it spreads the land. But that is the land. And very much in relation to what the land then gives us. So her cloak protects the land. So it's really interesting now, even just all those things, do you know what I mean? I should say St. Bridget is coming to mind, and you had obviously the Shawleys, and you had the Pirate Queens, and you have the likes of Maud Gonne, and you had those females who very much supported the Civil War and the role that they played, which would not be typical. There's definitely something. So I think, you know, even that, like, I feel that now. I feel it in my body as we're talking about it. You know, the importance of that.
And if you don't mind, maybe next time I would also like to ask you, because I understand that that's another hour of conversation, that we didn't discuss today the role of nature. And I think that it's also very powerful and very important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because even, so yes, we touched a little bit the idea of the geographical position and the role of the harbor and port and everything that's connected to trade and even to pirates. Yes, so this,
absolutely,
yeah, and at the same time we started today's conversation about the beautiful nature, and I also think that we could also address some exploration to this to the value of nature, of not only land as sort of historical territory of Cork, but also the surrounding nature, the environment which shaped the city and the character of people who have been living on this land for centuries. So I think it's also very important.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the sea is huge. The you know, from a nature perspective, the sea has been very much central to the city, but even just the geographical, the way the city is, like there's the north side and the south side, and you can see the way I'm even going at that, it's literally two hills, and the
Mm.
river runs through. The river runs through. That's the River Lee runs through. And you have the north side. And I'm looking at the north side. It's literally here, yet I'm on the south side here. So it's the valley, kind of the valley that is Cork City. Very interesting, really interesting, yeah. You've really got me thinking now, Marina.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm
Yeah, I know, it was great.
inspired a lot at the end. Yes, it's so beautiful. And this I also started feeling this beautiful female proud energy
Yeah,
of the
real proud energy. Yeah,
yeah, of this wonderful, strong and proud and wise women
yeah,
who embodied this land. Yeah, let's continue this conversation next time.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Marina. I really enjoyed that actually. It's really, really energized me. Really, really energized me. And there's an element as well, Marina. I mean, I would say, and feel safe, I really feel that sense of the city myself,
Mhm.
in relation to the the woman that I am and the woman that I'm becoming. I really feel that myself.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So that's precisely what I hope that we would be able to um, inspire, ignite in people, and utilize this in some um, collaborative action in the cities.
yeah,
I strongly believe that people who could reconnect with this, who can feel it, the next step might be inviting people to discuss what they can do can create together.
mm,
Not
mm,
just thinking that sort of mayor or city council or anybody will solve all their problems, but
mm,
if you sense this sense of belonging to the place, if you are the part of this soul of the city, it gives a purpose to to to
yeah,
to to do something to help this character
absolutely.
embodied
Yeah.
in
And
this.
it's interesting. I would even say myself, I think I said that like I actively pursued the city council myself because it was something really calling me to say, what can I do to support the city? And again, Ireland has become hugely important to me, and Cork is hugely important to me. And it was interesting that like I kept kind of knocking on the door, and then the door opened and they invite you in. So I felt that myself. I really have felt that myself. And say, even that, that you say, okay, right, okay, well, what more could I do? What could I be doing here?
Your story inspires me a lot because I very often uh, hear from people that we can't do anything. Local administration doesn't, city council doesn't want to listen to us. They live on their own lives. We will do something regardless of them, not in collaboration with them. And I don't think that this is. So again, there are different situations, of course, in different parts of the
Yeah,
world. But I think that it's so important to find this common ground and to find this point of contact with people who are in charge, with people
yeah,
who are capable, with people who have money to do this
yeah,
again. And it's so important to find these connections. And I really believe that this our concept of the soul of the city can be this uh, inspiring point, this sense. First of all, it's not mental, it's mostly about the feelings, about the emotions,
yeah,
about the spiritual connection. When people understand that we can do something together because we all are serving this place, we all are loving this land, we want it to thrive.
yeah, yeah. No, I do, and I'm seeing an awful lot of really, really impressive stuff going on in the city at the moment. I'm saying, wow, look at all this stuff they're doing. They really are doing some great stuff. But then again, you know, do people know about it? You know, that's the thing. Even remember I sent you the Living City festival. I was coming out of the city council offices last week, and I met this girl in the lift. Never met her before, and I was saying, "Wasn't it a beautiful day? It's beautiful." She said, "Yeah, I'm going to the Living City festival," and I said, "What Living City?" I'd never heard of it before, and I'm in the city council offices. I said, "Did you not hear about it?" "Oh," she said, "it's just amazing." She said, "Give me your email address and I'll send you the brochure." I hadn't seen anything advertised about it anywhere. So I think there's really good work going on, but maybe it's just not reaching people or whatever. I don't know, or maybe it just wasn't reaching me. I don't know. But that's how I got it. So then I spread it out to people and I said, "Oh, look what's going on in the city at this weekend." And my brother went with his family, and they said it was fantastic, and playing the old games in the city and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought that was really funny. I just
Yeah, the pictures are beautiful.
it's just a connection with somebody I'd never met before. Yeah, anyway. Thanks, Marina. I better go to
Beautiful. Yeah,
calling for my attention.
perfect. So
I'll
yeah,
let you know how I get on with Martin. I'm meeting Martin. I think it's next week, the week after, the man that he hasn't responded, which is kind of interesting. To the living cities, but then again, when I meet with him, I can have a conversation. I just sent him just a little note this morning, asked him did he find it interesting.
yeah.
But I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope that now you will be able to share your experience and
yeah. No, that was really, really interesting, and it's just a curiosity now. It's like, wow.
Yeah, beautiful. And I will start to transcribe to this, and we will be able to co-create some beautiful text.
Yeah.
For the presentation about the city.
Great.
Beautiful. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Talk to you soon.
Talk
Thank
to you
you so
soon. Bye
much.
bye.
Bye.